I am not your typical HR leader, and I understand that. Not only has my career grown organically, but here I am. I am covered in tattoos. I have piercings. I ride a motorcycle. I'm very involved in the hot rod and pinup community and do pinup modeling. That is often, it has a stigma to it. It doesn't negate the work that I do, but it's obviously the first impression that somebody sees, and that can make or break a situation for me when I'm in an interview or I'm looking for my next role or if I wanted to be taken seriously. And I have found that that has been a struggle for me to be considered a leader, to be taken seriously because of these things. And it shouldn't be. And I want people to understand that you can show up as your whole self and do the work and be amazing at it regardless. That is the tone I love to set.
Welcome to Manager, a podcast about the experiences of people leaders and how we can enable them to lead engaged, healthy, and high-performing teams. I'm Kamaria Scott, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we learn, lead, and succeed together. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Manager podcast. One of the things you will hear me say over and over again is that a lot of times the way that we lead is based upon how we've been led or experiences that we have. And we want to give the people that report to us a different kind of experience. I'm very excited for this conversation because we're going to talk about something you've heard before, inclusion, but maybe not the way you've heard it before. I'm very excited to welcome today's guest, Dani DeLorme. As always, she was referred to me. She's a friend of a friend of a friend who has been acknowledged to be a wonderful people leader and has insightful things to share with you as you consider how you have a more inclusive team. So Dani, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Clara. I'm very happy to be here and really excited to talk with you today.
I feel compelled to set the conversation up for the listeners. What you all may not know is that behind the scenes, I always start and ask people leaders, what are you passionate about? In the conversation, Dani and I were talking, and she was talking to me about the work that she did, but she's got these beautiful glasses on. She's got this vibrant personality, but there was something in the way she was talking that I was like, I don't know, something here is not connecting. And then you really started to talk about your true passion, which was inclusivity in a way that was beyond just checking the box of whether or not I have enough men and women and races. You started talking about it in a different way. Why is inclusivity near and dear to your heart and important to you? Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your experience leading teams.
So I have been in people leadership probably for 18 years now, and it happened totally organically. It's been an experience for me to learn how I want to be treated, how I've been treated in the past, how I've been led, and what I want to give to other people. It's important for me to highlight I am not your typical HR leader, and I understand that. Not only has my career grown organically, but here I am. I am covered in tattoos. I have piercings. I ride a motorcycle. I'm very involved in the hot rod and pinup community and do pinup modeling. That has a stigma to it. It doesn't negate the work that I do. It's the first impression that somebody sees, and that can make or break a situation for me when I'm in an interview or I'm looking for my next role or if I wanted to be taken seriously. And I have found that that has been a struggle for me to be considered a leader, to be taken seriously because of these things. It shouldn't be. And I want people to understand that you can show up as your whole self and do the work and be amazing at it regardless. That is the tone I love to set.
I love that because we say that a lot, don't we? Like we want you to show up as your whole self. And sometimes I feel like we then proceed to say, I want you to show up as your whole self, and then start to box people in to what we think from an organizational perspective or from a team leader perspective, what they actually should be. So I'm wondering, how do you then take that
I want you to show up as your whole self and bring that into how you lead people.
I show up as my whole self. So if I'm in a meeting with somebody, I'm not always in a blazer or long sleeves. I'm not here to tone down my glasses. I have a glasses collection of 58 pairs, and I love being fun about it. And it's just me as a person, and the way I speak to people, the way I lead, it all comes across very natural. Oftentimes, I have found that people are reluctant to the way I approach leadership and the conversations I have because I am so real, and they feel there's a catch to it, but there's not. By being able to just show up in the moment and being empathetic with somebody and being on a relatable level with them, if something is going on in their life, I'm very genuine about it. While I'm here to steer the ship and lead from that perspective, it only makes sense to lead from a human perspective. And we're all human.
We're all human. And when we're being genuine and we're connecting, even in our workplace, we're trying to get the best out of people. And I was in a meeting a while back, and we were talking about bringing the next generation to the workforce. And there was a mixture of people in the room, and the conversation steered towards interviewing. And we were talking about the younger generation. They were saying that they don't come to interviews wearing blazers and button ups anymore, and they're so informal. The conversation, it was very interesting because it steered toward, are you potentially overlooking very good talent because you have this preconceived notion about what they are supposed to look like, how they're supposed to present, especially for roles like coders, where they're going to put on a hoodie and be at their desk all day and never be client facing. When you and I had that first conversation, that really stood out to me because not only are you a people leader, but you worked in talent acquisition, you work in HR, you help with recruiting. I'm wondering, are you seeing more of that? The people who are perhaps missing the best talent they could have for their teams because they're so concerned with the external presentation of it.
I love that question because I will say over the past few years, I've been fortunate to have thought leaders that I work beside. And when I am being that cheerleader for the company and I'm interviewing people, the feedback is a lot less of, well, they didn't show up wearing this or they had a hat on, whereas it's more focused on experience and a culture add versus a fit. But have I seen it in the past? Yes, I've seen it when I have been in interviews and people overlook the work that I do. I've had very horrible experiences. And that has really shaped me into coaching and mentoring, hiring managers to look past that, especially when we were doing in-person interviews and work versus this virtual remote setting. Some people are very set in their ways, and it's supposed to be a certain way where we're prone to really believe somebody needs to show up looking like this. And then that will dictate if they're going to be a good fit for the role. Really, we should be looking at experience and behavior fit. And I always say behavior fit before experience. I think you can teach somebody something, but you can't really teach them how to align with their team members and the culture. And that is at a management level too, because so many managers that I have seen in the past have been very reluctant because this candidate didn't check the boxes that were supposed to be checked.
Yeah. And that is something that sometimes stems from the boxes we felt like we had to check to be successful. From a diversity perspective, we have come a long way. I have natural hair, and I've had natural hair for about 19 years. And I remember when I first went natural, having like loose, big hair was uncommon for African Americans. Like we would have this very sort of straight, burned hair. And then when my son was, 2, I decided that was more than I could maintain. And so I was like, I'm done with it. And I decided to do something different. Even my mom was like, oh, what will people think of you? Because there was this image we had to force ourselves into for corporate America. And whether or not it was, people accepting me deciding to show up this way, I had to say to myself, I'm going to be me, whatever version that is. Once I accepted that for myself, it influenced my ability to say, and I'm going to accept other people. So if they want to show up with big curly hair, they want to show up with a sleeve of tattoos, whatever their self-expression is, I'm willing to give it to them. And so I guess what I'm wondering for you is like in your own journey of having to say, I want acceptance and being able to accept yourself, does that influence how you help others get there and how you help them show up in their work?
Most definitely. And I think that comes from when I'm interviewing candidates, you break down that barrier and you make it more comfortable for someone to be authentic. Right off the bat, when I step into an interview with a candidate for a role, I am fully myself. You're going to get the glasses, probably going to see the tattoos. You're clearly seeing the nose ring. And I'm going to share a little bit about me to break down that wall where people feel very much comfortable showing up. And I have had this conversation with the leaders that I work beside. You have to be real and let somebody show up. If you're not feeling well and you want to wear a sweatshirt to work that day, do it because it's showing that you're real, you're vulnerable and not trying to, cover something up or put this facade up that is not necessary. That has nothing to do with the work being done. If you're more real, you're going to build trust in your people and you're going to build a culture of inclusivity, which is so important, especially today.
I love that you use the word facade because I've never used that word before, but that's exactly what it is, right? And it's forcing people to put on this facade in order to fit in or to belong. I imagine it takes a toll on people to have to put up a facade every single day. I think about the conversation in the past couple of weeks about code switching. And I know even amongst African-American communities and minority communities, we code switch for work and for outside of work. But that takes energy to have to mindfully say, I'm going to show up as a different person today from 8 to 5 so that I can feel like I belong. How do you think we help people, especially managers, recognize when they are maybe inadvertently requiring people to show up with a facade?
I think in the conversations that we have, it's pulling from that conversation what their first instinct is or what their feedback is. If the feedback leans towards, well, I feel they're strong, but there was something they were holding back. Then I have to open that conversation up more and ask, how did you deliver yourself? Did you allow yourself to be fully who you are and be real? If you're going through the muck right now, show up as somebody that's going through the muck.
Yes.
Because that shows that realness. And yeah, I definitely can tell just from the conversation and the feedback if they did not allow somebody to really show up as their full selves. And that's why I love being the first person to have that conversation with that candidate, because I'm going to notice the difference when I circle back with that hiring manager and have that conversation to really understand what they pulled from that conversation and how they led the candidate to feel comfortable.
I love that. Because I do think that the ability to bring your whole self to work starts in the interview process. We want to put our best foot forward, but there is this delineation between putting their best foot forward and having people feel like they have to be someone else to get the role. And so if you can go back to my hair example, I would laughingly say people get interview hair, right? They would get like my hair slicked back through the process. So they couldn't really tell. Once I got hired, I did get like full hair. And that was my way of being like, okay, I have to put this super pent up facade into place. But then I'm going to be able to show my real self once I get the job. That's what we want people to be able to do. I want to take it a little bit beyond the interview process. So now someone's on your team, they're there in all their full glory. How do we continue to help ensure that they don't have to put that facade back up once they've joined the team? We continue to show them that it's okay to be who they are and to bring their full selves.
I think by hearing them and giving them a safe space, that psychological safety to just continue on doing what they're doing. And that comes in the form of recognition recognition of their work, or recognition of your hair looks beautiful. I love that. Really just being honest and just continuing to be real and allowing for those moments where you're not. A situation for me was I lost my best friend, and I was taking care of her for a year while working. I would be working at her home while taking care of her. She'd be on meetings with me, and everybody could see this is a real side of me. I'm still showing up as my full self, but I'm not pretending. And that led so many individuals to not only reach out and say, thank you for being who you are, but also thank you for letting it be okay for me to be in my moments and to show up in the moments that I'm vulnerable in. I think making sure as a leader, and that you're making sure your other leaders are doing that, so everybody continues to feel that they are in that safe space and they can do that.
It does start with us. One of the things that I always share with managers is that we are always communicating. We're always cueing to people.
Mhm.
I love that you said something like, your hair looks beautiful. Even that recognition is like, you can wear your hair out. If I say, oh my gosh, I love your tattoos, that's recognition. That's welcome here. And for the first thing that comes, oh my gosh, I love your glasses, right? That encourages people. And so the realization that acceptance emanates from us, whether or not you can do more of that and you can do less of that. And the more deliberate we are about it, sends a message to our teams. And even to your point about, I have a friend that I'm taking care of who is sick, and you might see her, conveys, I'm human and there's things outside of my life that I'm balancing that are of equal priority. And you might have that same thing happening in your life as well. I think one of the reasons why we really enjoy the pandemic, I'd say enjoy the pandemic, that's very loose. One of the reasons why I think from an employee perspective, as Gallup measures employee engagement, and they saw that employee engagement actually improved during the pandemic, because for the first time, employees felt wholly cared about, and they did bring their whole selves to work. You could be in a meeting with a baby on your lap. You could be in a meeting with your support dog, which I always have mine. There was this acceptance of, you're in your house in your gym clothes. I know my team was notorious for being like, we're at a team meeting, everybody has on like yoga pants and tank tops. So people really felt like they were bringing their whole selves, their whole lives to work, because it was literally in our living rooms.
Mhm.
And as we get back to something that feels like normalcy, I do wonder if we've lost some of that, or how do we keep some of that, that you can bring everything to work and still do your job really well.
That is such a great point, and that's something I think of now as I'm in my search for my next role. Some of Even looking for part-time work while I'm looking for my next full-time role, a lot of these are now I have to go in person to meet people. There's a part of me that is now going back to that, well, I need to cover up. I need to do that, and I can't really bring my whole self, when ultimately, why not? I should be able to, because it's, again, the work that I do is not negated by that. I do think this shift that we are losing some of that real connection. And while we are a remote team, we get to see real life. We've been able to see the real life. Like you said, the babies, the dogs. I know I have my Peloton right behind me. I was known as my at my last role was the princess of Peloton, because it's all I talked about. It was a conversation starter for me. I even hosted an all hands meeting on my Peloton. And it was so great because like other people that had Pelotons got on theirs during the all hands meeting. And we just had like a great space, and it made it so much more personal and real. I do feel that shift is happening as people are now going back into the office, and we're not able to have that as real, because even in the water cooler setting, or if you're in a cubicle, you're still unsure of how to really bring your whole self. So I
Yeah.
think we have to be extremely mindful as leaders to allow that to continue on. And how do we do that? I think a kudos board, but in person instead of an electronic kudos board. I love superlatives like, who has the best glasses, who has the most interesting thing they did this month or something like that. So you're still getting that personal affect and you're still celebrating individuals.
Yes. What I really love about that is acknowledging that people are whole, full, colorful creatures, and you can acknowledge and recognize people for the work, but also for the things that make them them. Right. I'm a fan of, even to your point, like we'll make up superlatives that make no sense to anybody else. And it can change every single month. But it's sort of like who has the best hidden talent award? Who has the best fun thing they did over the weekend, adventure award? And it's encouraging people to share more of themselves, because if I know I can make this award, if I don't know, I can't make this award. Right. And the more that you do that, people feel seen and they feel valued. And I think we talk a lot about psychological safety, inclusion, but the how, that's what I always appreciate, is the how you might do it. Even being able to say, hey, we spent 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of every meeting talking about real life. We talk about who had an adventure, who had a challenge, who had a, oh my goodness moment. But I think that as people leaders, that also helps us to understand how to influence people. Helps us understand what matters to people. And we can talk to them on that level, which still impacts the work. It's not separate, because you're not a separate person outside of work. You're still you. You bring all of that to us. And the more I know about you, the more I'm able to be intentional. The more we know about people in their whole lives, the better we lead them.
100%. I could not agree more. It's so important because it's genuine when you know more about people, because you can address them on that personal level. And when they are addressed on a personal level, they feel valued. And if you feel valued, you feel that you're thriving and you're empowered and energized to do meaningful work. It is a full circle. I don't want that to be misconstrued as let's do this because we want the work to be good. I want it to be genuine. That is something that I'm always very, very focused on when I lead or when I coach and mentor other, especially greener managers. The technical aspect is great. No, but you have to focus on the people aspect as well. And that comes with getting to know somebody and understand what's going on. Hey, your performance it's kind of dropped off. This is unlike you. But if you have that context because you've been real with them and you know that they're going to show up and share with you and confide in you that I have things going on in my life right now. Okay, so how can I best support you so you know that you're supported and that everything is okay? And if you need to take a step back and prioritize other things, how can I best support you in that space?
Yes. It is relationship building, isn't it? Like, we talk a lot about employee engagement. It's almost always this transactional thing. We do it because we want the work. So I love that. It's like, no, it's not just because you want something out of them. It's genuinely reciprocal relationship building. People can see that we have their best interest at heart, interested in them as human beings. We want them to be successful. You can't position yourself as somebody who cares if you have no idea about that. It's almost like they continue to box people into, I only need to see this part of you. You're not able to tap in and position yourself as somebody who truly cares and who they're willing to open up to if something is a miss. I think the other thing that you said I really love was that is knowing them enough to know all of them means you do know them at their best as well. You know when you're not getting it, and you've built that relationship that allows you to address that gap in a way that is meaningful and authentic versus kind of like, let me go through these steps. Because in teaching managers, right, and teaching them conflict resolution and teaching them how to navigate challenging conversations and teaching them performance improvement, the piece that's always missing from all the training classes is, did you build a relationship with this person before you had this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to know them? Did they get to know you? Did you do the groundwork? Because the reason why you think the conversation is difficult is because you don't know how they're going to respond, because you've not positioned yourself as somebody who truly cares and is on their side. And so you're afraid that it's going to be adversarial. Versus if we started from a place of, let's bring your whole self to work so I get to know who you are. I'm very curious about you as a person. I want to know what's beyond the skills and the tasks, because then when I need to have that conversation, I can have it with you in a way that's meaningful and you don't have to guess about my intentions. You can receive what feedback I might be able to give you.
I, I absolutely love that you summarized it like that because it's so true. It was a core value at one of my previous companies. I have found that I do this in my personal and professional life, and it's assume positive intent. But I can't assume positive intent if I don't know you as a person. How can I assume that your delivery is positive, but there's something else going on, or you just didn't know how to phrase that well or give the feedback correctly? But we can have a conversation because I'm going to go in it open to the fact that I'm assuming positive intent by your feedback and your reaction. And that is so much the reason why I am drawn to more of a startup, small to mid-sized organization where I can come into a role and meet everybody on that personal level. I think once you get to this corporate level, you're unable to be that transformational HR. You're unable to form those relationships. And you do become the person that when your name appears on a meeting with somebody or you ask somebody to meet with you, it's automatically doom and gloom because they don't know your intentions. They don't know who you are and you don't know who they are. And how can you form those relationships and how can you build relationships and trust if you don't have that foundation? Working with people is just like a relationship. You're entered into this for a good amount of your life. Why not build actual relationships? It's the same thing as personal relationships. You have to understand people and how they operate and who they are as an individual in order to really understand how you're going to interact and work with them.
You said something interesting there because I too have worked in everything from startups with 300 employees to we have 700,000 people floating through this place. And one of the parts that was difficult for me in the 700,000 was almost that sort of forced identity compliance to the corporate way of doing things. I am wondering about balance in that. Like as a people leader, I want my teams to be successful. I want individuality. I want them to be who they are. But I may also find myself in an organization with a very strong corporate culture of what does good and successful look like here. And I'm wondering, is there a way that we can help people balance that? Like they can balance their individuality and who they are with what tends to happen as companies grow and they get more and more into conformity. How do we help people maintain that? Is there a balance to that?
I think the best way to do that, and this is what I found in more of that bigger corporate setting versus working with 50 to 100 people, is just continuing to be yourself. And I think leading by example is the best way. There is a lot of trying to find your way and navigating through that because you have to understand not everybody is in that mentality. I worked at a company where they were in business for 45 years and the systems were so antiquated. If you come in and bring that fresh new perspective, you just have to maintain that and be confident and rooted in that and make sure that the people you interact with that you lead still sense that and feel that in their core, because that is going to be the only way to transcend that stigma of not being able to be yourself.
That's wonderful advice. There's something else that stood out to me, the acknowledgement that you prefer startups and smaller organizations. It reminds me, one of my friends, her doctoral dissertation was about sort of self-selecting in or out of organizations based upon how they present as organizations and your presentation and value as an individual. What I loved about it was when I think about the breadth of places that I have worked in finance, tech companies, hospitality, grocery, and government. I discovered that I loved working in tech companies. I did not especially enjoy working in finance. For that reason, in tech, I could be myself. I could wear jeans every day. I'm a jeans girl at heart. I could wear my hair in a ponytail. I didn't have to sort of mask up or put the facade on to come to work. I could just be the version of myself. And I do think that's that phase of my life when I started really coming into who am I and how do I want to show up authentically versus kind of like the culture here says I have to show up like this to be successful. How important is it for people to self-select in and out of environments? First, to have the awareness, right? Because there are environments where you just cannot bring your whole self. How important do you think it is for people to be able to self-select in and out of the environments where they are comfortable, where they are welcomed to be their own selves? And how do they have an authentic conversation with their teams about that?
I absolutely love that question because I'm with you. In the tech space, more of like health tech, that's where I feel the most comfortable because everybody is so individualized and excited to show up as their whole self. And you take from so many different personalities and affects, and it's wonderful. And that's where it becomes personalized. Finance, I agree, not the same space. So over the course of the years, I am still selective because I know the spaces that I can't show up as my whole self. And I do not want to revert to the person that is not able to do that. That is the authentic message I want to send to people on my team or that I'm leading or mentoring. If you are in the process of looking for a role, be true to yourself. If you're going to show up every day and it's not going to feel genuine, it's not going to feel good, how are you going to bring your best in your role? You just can't because you're focused on being what they're expecting and trying to check this box, but not giving too much of yourself. It doesn't feel good. So you're not going to feel good in that role. And then why are you ever going to want to really thrive in that role and with that company if you're not feeling that? So I think it's really important. And the messaging is make sure that you feel both professionally connected to this company and this role, but also personally. Ask the questions in that interview so you know how do you celebrate differences? How do you celebrate achievements? How do you give feedback here? Those are the questions you want to ask. You don't want to ask, what's the culture like? Some people may love the culture and others may not. And so you're going to get a wide breadth of answers, but really focus on how are people celebrated? How are achievements celebrated? How are individuals celebrated?
I love that. It's not just about showing up and being in a space where differences are acknowledged and respected. It's also where they're celebrated. And that brings us back to what you were saying about being like, oh, I have the best glasses award. Oh, I have the best funky fashion award. And that is celebrating the uniqueness of people on our team. And I think it's important is we have to give other people the same thing that we want for ourselves. So much of what I hear from people leaders, and I know this firsthand from my own experience as a people leader, is often expected to give somebody something that I'm not getting.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to give somebody balance when I'm working 48 hours, when it's 72-hour period. And so I love you talking about your own journey of thinking about what's right for you and your desire to be in a place where you can show up and be celebrated for your own uniqueness. It's because when you get there and you have to hire your own team, if you yourself have to mask up to go to work, how are you
Right.
to hire people and then pay forward to them that same thing? It creates an inauthentic experience for everybody involved.
100%. And that is not getting off on the right foot because it's always going to be inauthentic and just going to feel disjointed. That isn't how we want anybody to feel in their workspace. But now, aside from my glasses, I work remotely. I have a closet full of pinup dresses. And sometimes I wear that while sitting in front of a computer and I celebrate it. I come from a very diverse background. My mom's Jewish. My dad was born in Cuba. And I want people to understand that uniqueness that I bring and I want to know about them. So celebrating backgrounds and differences is so important.
I'm curious, have you been in a situation where your uniqueness and your celebration of it has been contagious in the organization?
Most definitely. A great example is my last organization. One of the all hands we were having, a design engineer showed up and had funky glasses on. I was like, oh, I love your glasses. And they were like, I attribute this to you showing up and getting outside my box and really trying something has been fantastic. And in other organizations, I know showing up I have to speak to this situation because this was a controller of finance. Typically, we find to be more reserved and showed up at a car show I was hosting a pinup pageant at. And here I am in full pinup, and they were just so excited to be there. Like they just embraced this and then they wanted to do it all the time. So really just seeing that it's been infectious and really has shown that it can rub off on people and they feel good and they embrace it.
I love that. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that the bravery it takes to show up as your true authentic self, because we can say and do anything, but when you are brave and you show up as your most authentic self and bring your whole self to work, I've noticed around me, the same thing will happen. If I am casual and I laugh and I am whatever, other people will do the same thing. Sometimes even changing culture within an organization is not like this Herculean thing that we have to do. Sometimes it's just having the the courage to stand up and be like, I'm going to show up as my whole self. And then slowly but surely you see not only your team doing it, but other people doing it as well. It's a kind of a slow creep into acceptance. So this has been a wonderful, fun conversation. I have so enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you and just highlighting how you bring authenticity in your whole self and how you invite others to do that as well. Thoughts or words of wisdom that you could share with other people about how they might bring their whole selves to work and how they might invite their teams to do the same?
Thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It brings out a passion in me that I really love to focus on. Experience is one thing, you can have the skill set, but in order to add to a culture or add to an organization and have impact, it's not just about your skill set. It is about being comfortable in who you are, being rooted in who you are, and celebrating that. And then other people will celebrate that. And if those people don't celebrate it, they're not your people. It's not your place. And you know that it is time to move on. But be celebrated because you deserve to be celebrated.
I love that. And if people wanted to reach out to you to learn more just about you, the exciting things you do outside of work or your HR experience, is LinkedIn the best way to do that?
Most definitely.
All right. Well, then I will put your LinkedIn connections in the chat. It has been a fascinating conversation and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so thank you for joining us. And listeners, for you all, I encourage you to think about whether or not you are bringing your full authentic self to work, whether you are expressing yourselves and celebrating that expression, and whether you're allowing your teams to do it as well. Are you missing out on talent because you're concerned with the outer shell of what's happening? Are you building those relationships that are going to help you encourage, motivate, develop your teams because you genuinely know them and appreciate them? So if you're finding that you're not doing those things, I encourage you to think about how you might take a step in the right direction. So on behalf of Dani and myself, thank you for listening to Manager to Manager, and we'll see you next time.